I write everywhere. I write on trains, I write wherever I can. And sometimes, a couple of days, I've written in Aaron Burr's bedroom. It's pretty amazing to be in the space where he was in the later part of his life. Talk about artist in residence, literally.
That's, of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda, the composer of Hamilton. He's talking about how he wrote part of that now famous musical in the Morris-Jumel mansion in Upper Manhattan. George Washington, he met Alexander Hamilton there while they were fighting the Battle of Harlem Heights in 1776. And in a strange twist of fate, Aaron Burr, the sitting vice president who killed Hamilton in that infamous duel in New Jersey, he married the widow who owned the house, and then he moved in. Well, RFL executive producer Larry Epstein, he visited the mansion to see it for himself. Amazing history. I knew none of this before the story.
I know, it really is incredible. Thanks a lot, Rich. I had to see the place for myself. Only in New York could you actually see the show Hamilton, plus the house that Hamilton and Washington stayed in, and Burr actually lived in. George Washington slept here, and he also fought for his country here before America was even a country. The here is right here at the Morris-Jumel Mansion on the Harlem River in Upper Manhattan. The oldest house still standing in Manhattan, built in 1765 as a summer villa by a British officer named Colonel Roger Morris. And, since it was on high ground, General Washington made it the headquarters after the war broke out. Chris DAVALOS is the co-director at the mansion.
There would have been court-martials that would have taken place right here in this room. There was never a dull moment, so to speak, for Washington. And you had all of Washington's troops here, but the British had superior numbers. So even if you have thousands of troops, it doesn't matter if the British have superior numbers and they're pushing forward. They're pushing north up here.
Washington stood on this very balcony while the war was raging, and he was overseeing the fighting. It's fall of 1776. The Continental Army is regrouping, it's retreating. It's fighting the Battle of Harlem Heights just south of this house. George Washington's headquarters was in this very room. His army was on the run after it lost the Battle of Brooklyn, the largest battle of the entire war, but it only stayed here for 5 weeks before marching up to Westchester.
Eventually, Washington would need to get out of here, and that's when he went and shifted his troops to White Plains. And for the majority of the American Revolution, this is actually British headquarters. They also installed German Hessian soldiers that were fighting for the British as well. So we're one of the few properties on the East Coast that actually have all 3 major groups of the war stationed here: Continental Army, Hessians, as well as British troops.
This house also changed Washington's life and the country he was fighting to form. Here is historian and tour guide Jimmy Napoli.
But by the time he gets up here now, he's literally disgusted with this army. They showed complete unprofessionalism. He can't even look at them. And then he sees this kid. He's an artillery captain, and he's building an earthwork defense, and he's fortifying men behind it. This kid knows what he's doing. For the next 22 years, Alexander Hamilton and George Washington are side by side. These men become seamless, and they work together.
Hamilton stayed there during the war, and the man who killed him in that famous duel in 1804, Vice President Aaron Burr, lived there. He even got married there in 1832. Burr hooked up with Eliza Bowen, the wealthiest woman in New York. He's largely remembered as a villain, but his legacy is a lot more complicated than that.
He is a founding father. He was a war hero. He was a very complex man. He was for women's rights when most founding fathers were not. He was an abolitionist when most founding fathers were not. So he was a very complex individual.
Washington, Hamilton, Burr, one house, one city, all in New York City.
Hamilton retired to Harlem in the last 3 years of his life. He was building, this house was being constructed, his house, Hamilton Grange, not far from here. He picked up 32 acres of land. The property originally belonged to a gentleman named Bradhurst. In fact, Bradhurst Avenue, just a few blocks east of us, is named for him.
The mansion is open to the public, guided tours. They have lots of special events. There's always something going on there. They have movies, they have trivia nights, they have speakers, and you can find out everything you need to know by just going to morrisjumel.org. Back to you, Rich.
I will check it out, Larry. Thank you very much. All right, coming up next, everyone, we're going to have some local headlines, so please stay with us.